Hello. This is the first in a short series of videos I'm going to make where I ask myself some questions about why I do what I do and why I think what I think. Um, the first question I've asked myself is, for me, an obvious one. Why do I write? Um, so I'm going to try and answer that as honestly as I can. Okay, so here goes. So to answer the question of why do I write, two things immediately spring to mind. As are the two things that kick-started my current writing spurt, which started about 15 years ago. The two things were uh, the birth of my daughter and reading this book. Now, I happened to be reading that book before my daughter was born, um, because it was very popular at the time. Everybody was reading it. I'd always had a vague interest in science, which basically came from a love of science fiction. And so I read this book, and I did read it from beginning to end. I know a lot of people didn't finish it. And I knew it was important, but I didn't really understand why. So I read it again, and I got a little bit more this time, but still didn't really understand it. And then I realized I didn't understand it because I just didn't understand a great many things about what science is, how it discovers the things it discovers, and I guess the big shock for me was realizing just how incredibly ignorant I was of the world. And why is this tied into the birth of my daughter? Not long after my daughter was born, I discovered a lump beneath my left ear. And after several trips back and forwards to doctors and seeing specialists, it was confirmed that it was a tumour. Now, at the time, I didn't know if it was benign or cancerous. And I had a while to wait until I discovered which it was. That gave me a long time to think. And I started thinking about, well, what if it is cancer? And what if it's lymph cancer? And what if it spread throughout my body? And, what if I die? I started to think about my mortality. And I had a young daughter, a little girl. When I started to think, well, if something happened to me, she won't get to know me. She'll never know who I was and what I thought about and what I cared about. So I decided to do something about that. I started writing her a diary. I wanted to explain things to her, things that mattered. And that's when I started to realize, along with what I'd realized reading A Brief History of Time, was how little I knew about anything at all. And that was a very sobering thing to realize. So I started to read. I started to read everything I could get my hands on about science, from the most basic ideas to the most far out ideas. And I've been doing it ever since. I became a voracious reader of scientific books, magazines, anything that was on the radio, television, newspapers. I cut out the cuttings. I now have shelves full of scientific books and periodicals. And I started trying to put this together with my life experience. How did that fit in? How did that change the way I saw not only my life, but her life, my daughter's life? Now there's one more thing I should mention, and it's very important. When my wife fell pregnant with our daughter, I wanted my wife to have an abortion. Now my daughter knows about this now. We don't keep secrets in our family. But me coming to terms with the way I behaved at the time, which wasn't good, not good at all. Only later, thinking about what would have happened, how would my life have turned out if she hadn't been born, if my wife had given in to my demands. And that was the seed that led to writing for 10 years to create one book, my book Quintessence. Because essentially that's what it's about. It's about the choices we make and the effects they have on the rest of our lives and the lives around us, and even to the point of denying someone the chance to live. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not a pro-lifer. I have no desire to impose a view on abortion on anybody. People choose to do these things for their own reasons, and it's none of my business. But that's not what it was about. This was about asking myself a very difficult question. Why I felt that way. So that was the catalyst for that book. And that led on to all kinds of things. Because of the interest in science itself has expanded my it has expanded my consciousness in so many ways and led me into so many areas now, because once you start doing that, you spot patterns in things and then you go chasing after those. A lot of the time, those patterns are false, and you come to realize that. And that teaches you also a very important lesson, that it's very easy to get into a mindset that says, this is how things are. This is the way it is. But it's only by constantly challenging those things in yourself and saying to yourself, is that true? Is this really true? Is that the end of the line, or do I need to start asking questions again? And pushing myself, what I think, that little bit harder. And every time I have, I've discovered more often than not that the things I thought were true were not true at all. So this is why I write. This is the thing that burns inside now, and it does burn inside. This need to express that, the need to always question, the need to always push yourself that little bit further, and to not take things for granted, to not accept the ideas of others on face value because they fit comfortably inside your skin. So I guess that's it really. I'll ask myself another question and see what happens next time. Thank you.